Hey there, everybody. Franklin Taggart here. It is time for the virtual coffee break. Grab your beverage. I've got my coffee. Let's chat for just a minute, shall we? Thing that's on my mind today. Had a nice exchange with a good friend and colleague over the weekend, and it brought to mind an old workshop that I did a few years back that was all about why people don't buy. And this was a half-day workshop where we went through all of the reasons that people give for not buying and all the reasons that we try to sell things, but at the end of the day, the sales aren't made for some reason. And so I wanted to look at some of the reasons that people don't actually follow through when they see something, that is being presented to them on sale or for sale or something like that. And in particular, this was a list of things that I was put together for people who were doing online marketing. And it was called Why People Aren't Buying from Your Sales Page. Now, at the very top of the list is that the sales page was not being found by the right people. And I think that this is the biggest challenge that any of us have who are trying to sell anything, like whether we're an author trying to sell books or an artist trying to sell paintings or a photographer trying to sell photos. If it's not getting in front of the right audience, we're sunk before we begin. The right audience is the group of people, the community who's going to benefit from whatever it is that we're putting out there. Now, it may be individual people, it may be a group of people, but I think it's important to spend some time identifying the folks who really resonate with the work that you're putting out into the world and give them kind of an identity. Help them have an identity that you work with and that they can be drawn to as you're creating your message. For me, one of the things that's really interesting is that a lot of my offers are not for the same group of people every time. And so one of the things that I'm, a fan of is identifying a need in the marketplace and then creating a product or a service to meet that need. And very often it's not from the same group of people that I served with my last offer. So finding the right audience, look at your offer and really determine, are the people that I'm putting this in front of, is this really addressing something that they need or want? Is it something that they feel is important? Is it something that matters to them? Is it something that is interesting to them? Is it something that piques their curiosity? And those are the questions that I think are really important to ask. Finding the right people first is really the most important first step. The second thing that I put down is that they don't connect with your message. And this starts from the very beginning, from the very first thing that they see. So if you're trying to reach people with social media and you're not putting imagery or text or animation or whatever, if you're not putting something in there that makes them stop and look and make a connection with it, they're not going to be interested in what you have to say. So it's like you have to have something that appeals to them, that makes them want to stop and look at what's there. For a lot of folks who are using social media and for a lot of folks who are using email, one of the things that I stress is that there needs to be some kind of a headline and a hook that helps people to stop and take notice. And if they connect with that and want to look further, then your headline and your hook are doing a really good job. Now, the other thing that happens a lot of times is once they get to the messaging, once they get to the story there, they don't see themselves in it. They don't understand. They don't resonate with it for some reason. And not everybody's going to resonate with everything. That we already know that. But one of the things that we really have to work on is telling a resonant story And one of the ways that we can tell if it's resonant or not is if we resonate with it. It's like a lot of times I think we get too wrapped up about trying to get into the heads of our customers, when really what we need to be doing is telling a compelling story that comes from our point of view. If they resonate with that story, it will make them interested in what we have to say and what we have to offer. Now, yes, I do think it's important for us to ask them about themselves. That helps them also to kind of understand where they fit into the picture. But very often one of the things that happens is messaging doesn't resonate with people who actually did find the hook in the headline quite appealing. Now, I know that we all experience that in our email and in our marketing and in our advertising and things like that. When we see something where the headline is interesting, but we get to the message and the message we find really isn't what we're looking for. One of the biggest things that keeps people from buying from a sales page is that they don't understand the offer. The offer is too confusing, or the offer doesn't make sense to them. The offer may be presenting the wrong points. Could be that, the offer is not clear. I've had that happen with a lot of my messages in the past because I had a really interesting hook and a really interesting story, but when it got down to the offer, they didn't understand what was being put in front of them. And so I really had to work on clarifying that. If people don't understand the offer, or if they're confused by it, they'll click away from it. Now, the other thing that I think that's really important is that people will see an offer and they don't understand why it matters or why it's relevant to them. Now, this kind of goes to the resonance again, but a lot of times people just don't get why something matters. And maybe you've had that experience as well when you've opened up a sales page and you get there and you're just kind of scratching your head and you're going, well, I don't get why this was put in front of me. Doesn't make sense. Now, the other thing that happens is that there are sometimes people don't have a sense of urgency around an offer. And I know that there are a lot of tools and techniques that people use to create a false sense of urgency. But one of the things that I think is really important is for people to understand what's at stake. Sometimes that's enough for them to understand, hey, go ahead and get this right now, because there is something at stake here for you. What happens if you do buy this product and use it, or take advantage of this service and use it? And what happens if you don't? If people really know clearly what's at stake, that gives them an impetus to make the purchase in that moment. Now, the last thing I'm going to mention, there are a lot of other reasons that I can go for here. We can get as nuanced as we want to with this. But the last thing that I was going to put up there about why people don't buy is that there's cognitive dissonance about the price, or the transaction is too difficult to complete. So the cognitive dissonance about the price and the transaction, I include these in the same category because I really feel like that a lot of times they're related to each other. Sometimes people expect your prices to be higher than they are. And sometimes they expect the prices to be lower than they are. And that's where the cognitive dissonance comes in. Sometimes you're offering way too many options for how to buy it. Maybe they don't need 5 payment plan options. Maybe they only need 1. And maybe the portal needs to be less confusing. Maybe it's like I've had some shopping cart experiences recently where I clicked on the purchase button and I got to the shopping cart and I didn't understand how it worked. It wasn't easy enough. So make sure that your price is something that makes sense to them and that they understand, and that they connect the value of the offer with the price that you're offering, and make the transaction easy to complete. Don't make don't put any friction in your transaction at all, right? So those are the thoughts that I've got about why people aren't buying. And we can talk as much as we want to about why people do buy, but I think it's just as important to understand why they don't. In this Christmas season, in this holiday season, I hope that a lot of people are buying what you're putting out there. I'm going to be having my own series of offers coming up in the next couple of weeks, and I'm excited about them. They're just not quite ready for prime time yet. Thanks as always for listening, and I appreciate your support and your time and your attention. You're wonderful people. Have a good one now. So long.